Hey, this is Jeffery Puckett, CourierJournal.com, USA Today Network here at Forecastle. Very happy to be joined by James Alex from Beach Slang. Welcome, sir.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for taking the time. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Did you not get the memo about the temperature here today?
I didn't get that. I would have braved it anyway, I suppose. Yeah. But wowee, yeah. You know, I'm in it right now for sure. Yeah.
Well, style above all else is what I always say.
It, you know, pain's temporary, glory's forever, I suppose. Yeah.
Now, Beach Slang is one of my favorite kind of bands. I love loud, catchy, and I love great album titles.
Oh, right on. Thanks, man. Yeah. The album titles, I'm really just doing my best to rip off the Smiths, you know, keep up with Morrissey, yeah.
It really does. It's almost like an American punk rock version of Morrissey, those titles.
Wow, right on. You should write our next bio. I love that. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I suppose it's that. But yeah, loud and catchy, I suppose that sums us up pretty good.
Yeah.
Well,
there are worse things.
Yeah, that there are. That there are, yeah.
And speaking of which, I don't think I've ever read a story about you guys that didn't have the R word in the first few paragraphs, replacements. Is that fair, or is that something you get tired of?
I'll never get tired of it. I hope that it's fair. You know, I mean, Westerberg's my favorite writer. You know, they're my favorite band. So I hope that it's fair. You know, we're certainly not trying to be a Xerox of them, but I came up on their records, you know, and I subscribe to their sort of charge at rock and roll, right? So, yeah, I'll never get tired of it. I just want to make sure we're not viewed as clones of that, because they already do that thing, and we're never going to do it better than they do. So, yeah, we're trying to carve out our own little niche as well. Yeah.
Well, coincidentally, I just spoke with Tommy Stinson 2 days ago,
Okay,
and he asked me he said, who you're listening to, and I said, well, this band Beach Slang, I think you'd like it. And he goes, oh yeah, I got their records.
Yeah, Tommy's great, man. He took us out for a week. I suppose it's close to a year ago now, and it was unreal, right? And then if I could share this story with you,
sure.
we were on tour, and the last day of the tour was in Austin, and our stuff got stolen that night, and Tommy reached out to us, and he was like, well, I've got something for you, and he gave me one of Westerberg's old guitars sort of make up for the one that got stolen. I don't think I've ever been happier to be victimized before in my life, right? It was like, so I have one of Paul Westerberg's guitars at my studio at home. So yeah, you know, I got robbed, but you know, it came back, you know. Yeah. So Tommy's a fantastic guy.
The last time Westerberg played here, a big fan brought a really nice guitar that he wanted Paul to use, and Paul was like, sure, I'll play it. And then at the end of the set, he completely blanked and he destroyed the guitar.
Right on. Yeah.
And he walked off stage, and everybody said, that wasn't your guitar. He goes, oh no.
Oh, right.
So he was super nice to the guy, you know, he tried to make up for it.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I suppose, like, had I been the guy in that situation, I might even dig that a little more, right? Be like, oh, I got this guitar Westerberg smashed, you know? So yeah, right on. That's a cool story though. Yeah.
I think one of the things that you and Paul share is a love for like outsiders, misfits, people who color outside the lines. Is that something that just fascinates you, just human nature-wise?
Yeah, for sure, man. I've always, you know, I suppose like a lot of people, I just sort of tire, or I don't find any sort of interest in things that just sort of exist in a very vanilla space, you know. I like a little scarring, some bruises, right? I mean, there's stories to tell behind those things, and I think I've always identified, I don't know, if you sort of live without any struggle or adversity, it's like, I'm not really sure what you're telling, right? So I've always been drawn to people who have stories to tell, because I'm much more an observer of life, I suppose, than even a participant, although I'm trying to change that, right? But I've just always been such a studier of, you know, people and things, and, you know, what better to be sort of magnetically drawn into than people that actually have something to say, you know? Yeah, for sure.
Was that always that way as a kid? Were you just drawn to watching people?
For sure. Yeah. I just, you know, I don't know. I just always sort of had a shaky, I suppose a bit of a shakier self-esteem. So I don't know how much value I sort of put on myself as a kid. So I was just like, well, surely I'm not interesting enough. So I sort of I was like, well, let me look at people who are, and maybe there's something to take away from that, you know, maybe I can evolve into a more fascinating character if I observe a little bit more. And then I just sort of stayed locked into it. I still don't think I'm a very observable person, but I do genuinely enjoy sort of that, you know. Maybe it's the writer in me, or that little person who aspires to be a writer. It's just like, you know, you sort of study things that you know,
Yeah.
that fascinate you. I don't know. Maybe it's that. Yeah.
You got to get all that stuff piled up in your head for later use.
Yeah, yeah. It was like there's this story about Bukowski where he was on the bus and he said something. He saw this really beautiful woman come on the bus and he, you know, he had a bunch of pock marks and a scarred face and things. And he got off the bus and he said to himself like, I feel sorry for her, you know, because she'll just never evolve to this level of. Yeah, and I don't know. That's always stuck with me since I read that bit, and I suppose I locked into that. Yeah.
Well, when did you start translating all that into music? When did you start writing, or just messing around with guitar even?
Yeah, I was sort of a late bloomer, I suppose. I didn't really start playing till I was like really playing, I suppose, till like early teenage kind of thing. Like, and I thought that was cool. But I was like, I was writing like poetry and probably really horrible short stories before then, and then it was kind of like I dated this. She was just sort of fascinating, you know, like this story's as old as rock and roll, I suppose. Like she just, you know, thought guitar was really cool. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna pick up a guitar and I can sort of see if I can woo her, right? And that was sort of my first foray into it. So it was in that really sort of lovelorn sort of attempt. But then what I found, you know, the thing that came out of it was like I started mashing these dumb little adolescent poems up against some chords, and all of a sudden things started feeling pretty okay, right? Like, and it was a little more therapeutic than just writing on paper. You know, you sort of blasting those out through an amplifier, and you start to feel a little bit of that bravado, right? And sort of that, you know, when you're looking for your voice, right, as a preteen or an early teen, it's sort of like all of a sudden you maybe start to find it a little bit, yeah.
Were there any bands in the Philadelphia scene that you kind of looked up to? Was Marat, are they Philly?
They are Philly.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're great and like deserve to be so much bigger than they are, right? Yeah, Philadelphia's like super solid, you know, like you know, Kurt Weill, and I mean the list goes on and on, right? My friends like Me Without You are just really fantastic, but it's like, yeah, there's this really deep well of like, it's kind of great when all that good stuff's being made so close to home,
Right.
because like you don't want to be the weak link in the chain, right? So it's almost this like really healthy thing. I think we drive each other to do work that's better than we would do if we just sort of existed out in the forest by ourselves, right? It's like, yeah, so I suppose that's a really cool thing about Philadelphia. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. I sort of live in my own space so much that I think sometimes for fear of being thievingly influenced by other people, I try not to observe too much, you know, right? Because I just, again, just like with the Mats, you know, it's kind of like whatever band we might talk about, they're already doing their thing better than I can do it. So I try to keep my influences to those things that already carved themselves into me when I was a kid, before I knew to have that thievery defense up, you know? Like those records are already carved into me, and that's going to come out. But yeah, these days I sort of more fall into bands like happenstance, you know, like touring and things like that. But I just don't want to inadvertently rip them off, you know? Yeah.
Now, do you enjoy the festival experience? It seems like it'd be radically different from playing a club.
Yeah, I do, man. I mean, I enjoy it. It is. It's wildly sort of different, but it has those things. Like I find when we don't do a festival in sort of a long time, I'm like, oh, I sort of miss the chaos of what a festival is, right? There's just so much going on, and it's like scattered over like a pretty wide range of, you know, an area, right? And it's just like, and you're just like, you're backstage or whatever eating, and it's like, oh yeah, there's the guy from Weezer. You know, and that's weird, right? And that like never gets old. I remember we did like Riot Fest 2 years ago, and like the Pixies are like top 3 bands for me, right? And I'm walking out of just like getting a drink, and I cross David Lovering, you know, and I had that moment where I just, without, it was like an involuntary like, hey, you're, you know, like, and he was just the sweetest guy in the world. But it's like records that literally shaped me and kept me above the drowning line. Here it's like I'm just walking past their drummer after just getting a beer, right? I mean, that's like, so that stuff, right? That stuff doesn't happen as often when we're just touring in the club circuit, you know? So it's pretty cool, yeah.
Anybody here you want to maybe check out after your set?
I'm trying to figure that out. I know we have to jump to get to Birmingham tomorrow, but I made a playlist for Forecastle. Like there's been so many people here that aren't on our day, you know, like, but I know LCD Sound Systems tonight, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Yeah, like, But like John Moreland, I know like Connor's here. Yeah, like well, Lucy Dacus is here today.
Right, she played already.
She did, and I was like, I'm watching the clock as we're driving in because we pretty much just drove from Philadelphia, and I was like, well, she's done playing now, and I was super bummed about that. And my friend Ricardo from Philadelphia is actually playing drums with her on this tour.
All right, that was his first gig with her. Yeah.
So the whole thing was just, it was like sort of a double bummer. But she was like really high on my list of like wanting to see, and that sort of fell through. And like unfortunately, man, that's like, so the upside of like seeing David Lovering after getting a beer, that exists, but then there's like so much going on, or it's spread across days where there's like, oh, I can't wait to see, oh, they play a different day and we have to be in this city. That's the bummer side of it, I suppose. But
that you want to see,
right? Yeah. Sure. So it's that. Yeah, we're all in it together. You know. Yeah.
All right, cool. James. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks for your time.
It was a pleasure
to meet you.
It.
Thank you, brother. Right on.
Come back and join us here at Forecastle Festival with Courier Journal, Jeffery Puckett. Thank you.